Good morning. I'm Belinda Chapman, and I'm the host of our Compassionate Women's Health community. This is an interview to celebrate, as much as you can celebrate, Fertility Awareness Month for the month of June. So I have asked Phoebe to come and share her fertility journey. Welcome, Phoebe.
Thank you, Belinda.
And I'll just introduce Phoebe a bit more formally. So Phoebe Dray is a qualified award-winning accountant on a mission to help small business owners succeed in business by far more than crunching numbers. Phoebe is in fact a business finance success coach with solid experience in management accounting, business strategy and cash flow improvement strategies. Phoebe is also a mum to her sassy little 4-year-old Georgia. Phoebe, in today's interview, will be sharing her fertility journey to create her miracle baby girl and the lessons she learned from the roller coaster fertility ride. Certainly is a roller coaster. So I'll hand over to you, Phoebe, to share that story with us, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Sure. And feel free to jump in if you've got any questions. So sure. Belinda and I were actually just chatting a moment ago before we started recording, and she's like, stop, we need to record this. So in my late 20s, I broke up with my long-term partner, who I thought was going to be my future husband and the father of my children. But fortunately, I realized before that all happened that we weren't suited to each other, and then went on a bit of a journey myself of personal discovery, personal development, and took me quite a few years actually to meet my now husband. So I think I was about 35 when we finally met. And I said to him very early on in the piece, we'd probably been together for maybe 2 or 3 months, that if you're not interested in having children and if you don't want to get married, I don't have time to waste. My clock is ticking. So there's the door if that's not on your radar. Yeah. So he very kindly said, okay, well, if you'll come to Patagonia with me for our honeymoon, I'm happy to get married. And I said, fair enough, I'll do it. You put a ring on my finger and I'm there. So Dan and I quite quickly got engaged. We were married within 2 years of starting to date each other. And yeah, the rest is history. So we went off on our honeymoon and decided we'd wait till we got back to start trying to have children. And I think I was probably about this stage 37. And I'd been to my doctor not long after Dan and I met, and she'd done all the blood tests, and she'd come back and said, look, you've got, very high count of eggs left. So, if you start trying to fall pregnant and it doesn't happen within 6 months, you really should go and get some professional advice and just see what's happening. So Dan and I'd probably been trying to conceive for about 6 months, 7 months, and things weren't really happening every month. I get really sore boobs every month. So every month I'd get these big boobs and they'd be really sore, and I'd be like, oh, it could be the month that I'm pregnant. And once again, my period would come along and I'd be, realize that I wasn't pregnant. So finally I said to Dan,
wow, I think what a tease, hey? Like, isn't it amazing what the body can do?
I know, they'd get really rock hard and get, probably go at least 1 or 2 sizes larger every single month. And they still do.
I've never done that before.
Every month my boobs do that. So I don't know about you, but I'd almost need to have 2 different size bras just to get me through the month. But that's a different story. So anyway, my body would tease me. I'd be super excited. I'd be like, this could be the month. And I even started doing some pregnancy tests, and they always were coming back negative. Yeah. And then my period would arrive. So I said to Dan, look, we really should go along and find out what's happening. And friends of mine had been through the fertility journey themselves and always recommended a doctor here on the Gold Coast called Dr. Ong. So we wanted the best. So we went and visited Dr. Ong, and he sent us both off to get our tests. And if you've met Dr. Ong before, he's very blunt, but in a funny way. So we came back in after getting our tests, and he said to me, oh, your results came back and was 20 or something, or 19. I'm like, oh, what does that mean? He's like, well, you got shitloads of eggs. And I was like, oh, well, that's good to know. And then he looked at Dan and said, but you have no sperm. So it wasn't like low count or slow or anything like that. He literally had no sperm at all. So what he said to him is, I think you could potentially be a carrier of cystic fibrosis, and which is quite common in Caucasians. It's quite a common condition or genetic match that we've got. So he sent Dan off to get tested for that, and it came back positive. So he's a carrier. And in some very rare cases, men are actually missing their vas deferens. So it means that he's basically had a vasectomy without having a vasectomy. But there were sperm. So we got tested to make sure that he actually had sperm, and he does have sperm. And Dr. Ong liked to say they are just trapped in the factory and they can't get out. So they'd kind of be swimming around in there. Like, I just imagine these little sperm headbutting It just can't get out. So the only option for Dan and I was to go down the path of IVF.
Yeah.
Which, you know, you don't really know a lot about, to be honest. It's not kind of commonly spoken about. I'm really open and I share my story with people a lot. And I don't know, some people, you know, quite private and like to keep that way, which is totally fine. And I just want to say that this was my journey, and this is the way I deal with my own situations. And I know everyone's very different. So please don't take what I did or what happened to me and feel that you should be the same in any way, or that your journey should be the same, because it's absolutely
That's
so
a really
personal.
good point to make, isn't it? Because it is, everyone's reason for fertility issues is completely different. How they got there, where they're at, their state of mind, the environment around them.
And what they're willing to do and what they want to do and what they're not. Because I found, to be honest, when I remember saying to Dan before any of this even happened, that if I had to do IVF, that was a deal breaker for me, that we'd just have to kind of agree that maybe we weren't meant to have children. And I don't know what it was, to be honest. I don't know why I kind of had that perspective.
When you originally had it.
Well, why I originally had that perspective, it was kind of, I felt like maybe if I couldn't have children naturally, it just meant that I shouldn't have children. And I'm not sure whether maybe the women in your group, and some of them probably are, but some of them may not be, but I was really like kind of a bit spiritual, and I felt like, you know, maybe it was the universe saying that it wasn't meant for me. But of course, when you're given that situation and you don't have any other choice, you kind of open your mind up. And Dr. Ong would say, well, look, you know, humans aren't meant to fly, but they've created the aeroplane. So would you not fly just because you weren't built to fly? You know, technology changes and we can do things today that we couldn't do before. So I was like, okay, fair enough. So I had to get over myself.
Well, I appreciate where you're coming from, and I think that many women in the group will as well, because you kind of get to this point where and it feels the same with like a relationship. Gosh, if it's really this hard, is it really meant to be? And I think we come across a lot of things like that in life, that would sort of help a person make a decision to not give up, but to decide that enough is enough. And it sometimes is that point that, you know, we've thrown everything at this, we've done everything we possibly can. It's time now to call it. And that decision to go, it just wasn't happening, is the reason. But what kept me going anyway was that unshakable biological desire to just create a family. Like I couldn't, there was no rationalizing it. I just had to go with it.
It's interesting. I did during the my process, and I'll share this a bit, but I did see I guess she was a kinesiologist, but a spiritual kinesiologist, and she actually went into past lives. And apparently in one of my past lives, I lived in a little village with my husband and my child, and I think my child was a toddler or something, and my husband would go out to work and would come home, and apparently one night he came home, this is a past life, and this is what she shared, that something had happened to my child during the day, and it was my responsibility. And my husband basically said, they didn't die, but it wasn't good, and he basically said, you're not fit to be a mother, and kicked me out of the village, and kicked me, and it actually makes me emotional, thing that kicked me out of the family. And so I've carried this I'm not meant to be a mother and this infertility story through, you know, my lives. And it was coming up, and this is kind of what was coming up for me now, that I remember the second time we went in and had a Morella. I'm getting a bit emotional, but I remember just thinking, I'm not meant to be a mum. Like the second time when I went in, they're like, oh, we've got a Morella, which is not what you want to hear. You want to hear that they've got a beautiful blastocyst or an embryo. If anyone's done IVF, you'll probably understand. But a Morella is a couple of days before it would actually make it into your uterus. Hopefully I'm using it correct.
3 or 4 day embryo, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about a 3 or 4 day embryo, and it would basically, my doctor said, it would normally be in your fallopian tube at this point, and the pH is much different from that when that's conceived in your fallopian tube to when it actually arrives into the uterus and implants on the uterus lining. So he said, look, the chances of it taking are very, very low, but you know, you've got no chance of falling pregnant naturally. So we'll just put it in and we'll see what happens. And of course it didn't work. But I remember all those emotions coming up for me then, think, you know, of like, I'm not meant to be a mum. This isn't my journey. So all this stuff came up for me. And and it was after that second round that I went and had this healing session with his kinesiologist, and it came up, and it kind of like, yeah. And I just recently had another healing session. And as part of that session, it was a very out there session, like next, you know, I can't even explain it on here, but
yeah,
just in the middle of it, she kind of channeled through saying, we need to clear your infertility story. Like it's still there. Like this story of you not meaning to be a mum and doubting yourself all the time. So it was really interesting that even after now being a mum and having conceived Georgia, that I still have this kind of doubt around being a mother. So I don't know whether it's got to do with that. Maybe my mindset around, if I can't fall pregnant naturally, that just means I'm not meant to be a mother, and I was ready to give up pretty early in the piece. But Dan and I didn't. We decided, yes, we're going to try IVF, and we did our first round, and I guess really didn't know what to expect, had no understanding of the IVF journey, didn't know the numbers. And I'm, as Belinda shared, I'm a business and finance success coach, and I teach people all about numbers and that numbers never lie. And I remember going into our first egg collection like operation, and the scientist came in and talked to me, and he started sharing the numbers with me, and I was blown away. He was like, you know, of all the eggs we collect, this percentage will actually be viable to, you know, will actually be mature enough to fertilize. Of all the ones that are mature enough, this percentage overnight will actually take. And then all these ones that take, this is the percentage that will actually make it to day 5 or day 7. I can't remember. Was it day 5? You had to have your day 5, and then
5 or 6.
5 or 6. And then on day 5 or 6, you know, the chances of that embryo actually implanting is this much. And it was just like, oh my gosh, like the numbers just went from, and my whole world was just like, oh my God, because I just thought that IVF was a silver bullet. You know, if you couldn't fall pregnant naturally, just go and do IVF. And within one cycle,
shock,
it was a really big shock for me and a really big rude awakening. And I remember, you know, waking up after the egg collection with the number on my hand thinking, yes, you know, I got 12 eggs. And I think I had over 30 eggs collected in the whole. We did 3 rounds of IVF, and Georgia was literally my only embryo in 30 rounds. And thank God she took, because she was it. She was all we had.
Yeah.
So numbers don't lie. And those statistics were quite shocking for me. But I think if you are thinking of doing IVF, it's probably good to be aware of it, to understand what, you know, but, you know, when you want to be a mum and you want to have a family, even 1% chance, you know, when Dr. Ong said to me, you know, the chance of this Morella actually working compared to 0 chance of falling pregnant naturally, I was like, well, I'll do it. I'm willing to do what it takes. And that was the other thing too. So after the first round didn't work, didn't do too much differently. I did go and have a laparoscopy and had a little bit of endometriosis, not a lot, but Dr. Ong was like, we want to have, as you know, you want to have endometriosis because we want to have some reason why your eggs aren't very good quality and why they all were dying or not really surviving the fertilization process. So I did have a little bit of endometriosis. I don't think it was severe or anything like that, but you know, that was probably a good thing that I had some, because it kind of gave some reason for why my my eggs weren't surviving. So did the second round. We had pretty much exactly the same results as the first round. Got one Morella, and I remember that time. And I was chatting to Belinda before we started, when I went in for my my transfer on the day 5, the scientist coming out with, you know, saying, "Oh, we've got a Morella today," and I just burst into tears, and I kind of just felt like that was it, that I really wasn't meant to be a mum, and you know, just wasn't going to work for us. And I remember, and then I was still going to work, and I remember Belinda and I were talking about working throughout the process. And I did share with, I think, some people what I was doing. I didn't share with everyone, but on the day that I'd go in for my blood test, or my pregnancy test, and then I'd go back to work. So both the first 2 cycles, I'd go and have my pregnancy test in the morning, and then I'd go to work and I'd get the phone call mid-morning to say that, you know, I wasn't successful, that I wasn't pregnant. And I just thought, I really didn't want to be there. Like I didn't want to be in a work environment. I didn't want to get that phone call. Yeah, like it's shitty. It was really shitty. And I remember walking out of, I was working in a bank at the time, and walking outside across the road to the park and just thinking, this is the last place I want to be right now. And Dan was at work, and and I said to Dan that, so we did 3 rounds in total. So the next round I was like, right, I'm throwing everything at it, probably like you showed, Belinda. So I stopped drinking alcohol, I stopped drinking coffee, I cut out sugar from my diet, I cut out gluten. yeah, I exercised, I did as much acupuncture as I possibly could. And I also had those healing sessions with the kinesiologist. I had 2 or 3 of those. I remember Dan's very science-based, so probably Belinda like you, but very, very, if it's not proven by science, then it doesn't exist. So he'd ask me about these sessions I was having, and I'd start to be like, oh no, just don't tell me. You do whatever you want, but just don't tell me what you're doing. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So
I was pretty much, I've got an engineer for a husband, so I might be an environmental scientist, but I was doing all the woo-woo.
well, my husband's an engineer too, so he was just like, and it's the funniest thing, he grew up in a commune in central New South Wales, like just west of Coffs Harbour. Wow. So I think he was maybe surrounded by so much of this kind of hippie woo-woo stuff.
Yeah, they'll either go either way, won't they?
he and his sister rebelled, and they've gone completely the opposite way. So unless it's like hard facts in science, he just doesn't want to know about it. But yeah, so I did all this woo-woo stuff. And I remember talking to Dr. Ong about it. And he's like, look, Phoebe, if drug addicts couldn't have babies, then, they wouldn't be falling pregnant. So don't worry, and alcoholics, and if people smoking. So, don't worry about doing all this stuff. And I was like, you know what? It doesn't matter. I just going to do anything and everything I possibly can.
And that's such a type A personality thing to do. Like, it's the one thing you can control, isn't it? Like what you put in your body and how you manage your body is the one thing you can control. And when you're that type A personality, you will do whatever you possibly can to control every element that is within your power.
Yeah. And because Dan and I really had decided that was going to be it. Round 3 was going to be our last attempt, and just accept if it didn't work, then that was, what we'd agreed that was okay. That's what we decided. So I was just like, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And I'm not sure, maybe Belinda, you had the similar thing, but it was like a tablet about that big, and they'd put it underneath your stomach, inside your skin, and it kind of basically put my body into menopause.
Oh no, I had an injection. Like, it wasn't a tablet. It was a big thick needle that they basically had to do local anesthetic before they put the needle in.
So this was like, he did inject it underneath my skin, but it was like, I don't know, it was kind of big, this thing, and it would slowly dissolve over the month.
Wow.
And I did 2 of those. So it would 30 days, it would kind of dissolve and slowly release hormones into my body that would basically trick it into being in menopause.
Okay.
And he did 2 of that. And then once I finished that, that's when we kind of then, like, I know that was meant to
shut everything down to then kick off fresh.
Yeah. And so we did that, and he was like, after this time, it's basically donor eggs. We can keep doing round after round after round, but I can't guarantee, your eggs don't seem to want to survive the journey. So there's not much else we can do. You can keep throwing money at it and keep going. But Dan and I was like, no, I think this is it. And I think as well, like I was chatting to someone the other day, and this was just me personally, but I think if I did have donor eggs as well, like when the going got tough and stuff, I might, I just never knew what my mindset would be in that time. So I just wasn't willing to go down that path personally. And I know, look, everyone's got their own journey, and they're willing, depending on your circumstances and what you want to do. But just for me personally, I just knew that wasn't an option of what I wanted to do.
And I imagine most people would actually have that mindset. The same, you started with that mindset, I'm never going to do IVF, and then you changed your mind. But, when that is presented to you as the only option, it's one of those things that you don't know what you're really going to decide until you have to.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe if that cycle didn't work and we were back for the review meeting and
you were still keen to still go,
it might have been an option. And I just don't know what I would have chosen in that moment. So who knows, I did change my mind about IVF. So potentially I could have been like, no, I really want this, or no, I think that's okay. And to be honest, I think if we hadn't have fallen pregnant, there would have been a big journey of getting the healing and the help that I needed to kind of come to terms with it. And I still, even now, even though I've got Georgia, I still do a lot of healing, and it's on other stuff, not just about being a parent, and not just about the IVF, but a lot of different things. So I do always try and, energetic healings and counseling and working with coaches and all that's really important to me, because I'm always trying to just improve and better my life. But so I guess I was going to share, and I suggested Belinda, just a couple of the things that I learned personally from that journey. So it was we kind of found out maybe in October that we couldn't fall pregnant naturally. So then we started our first round in about January, and we fell pregnant with Georgia in the September. So we we kind of did 3 rounds quite quickly, and very fortunate. And I met other beautiful women and couples on the journey who'd been, you know, up to cycle 20 and 21 and had all these different situations. So, you know, I know that I'm really blessed that I got, luckily got Georgia after round 3. But, you know, then you speak to other people who get 20 embryos with their first cycle. And that was something actually that I really was not comfortable with, as well as having all these embryos frozen as well. So maybe the universe realized that and just gave me the one. I'm not sure. But yeah, so the things that I took away. So Dr. Ong was really lovely. And I always, you know, you just never know small acts of kindness and how that can impact your life. So whenever I was going under the anesthetic, he would always be there holding my hand and gently rubbing it. And just having that reassurance at that time was so magical. And it was so funny. I had a colonoscopy maybe a year ago. And I remember as I was lying on the table ready to go under, I'm saying to Vanessa, now you're going to start rubbing my hand. You're going to hold my hand. So Dr. Ong was so beautiful how he did that. And just, you know, you never know, even when you're out, you know, at a coffee shop or walking the dog, you know, that small act of kindness and the impact that can have in someone's life. Yeah. So that was one thing. The other thing was just for me personally, just to be willing to do whatever it took. So, you know, I had the acupuncture, I saw the spiritual healer. I stopped eating and drinking all those foods that I loved. So just for me personally, I was just willing to, for that last round, willing to do whatever it took, and knowing that at the end of that, okay, well, I tried everything. Yeah. So, you know, I don't feel that I could have done any more to have made the outcome any better.
Yeah.
Another thing too is just being willing to share your story and being vulnerable. People love to help you. And I know Belinda was saying that, you know, when she was going through the process, she didn't share with anyone, you know, at work. But if you feel comfortable, even just finding someone that you trust. And my acupuncturist had been through IVF as well. So often when I'd go and see her, my first half an hour was pretty much a counseling session where I'd share with her how I was feeling and the emotions and everything else, and have a good cry. Yeah. And so just having that release and having that one person at least that I could share with that had actually experienced it as well. So even if you're in business or life or work or whatever, just if you've got one trusted friend or one trusted person that you can talk to and share and be vulnerable with, it just helps you to release that kind of any emotions that you're holding that could potentially, I feel like often emotions in your body can block things. So being able to release that, I feel, helped a lot.
Definitely.
What was my other ones? Be open to changing your mind, and it's okay to change your mind about things. So, you know, when I said I was very shut down to IVF and wasn't willing to do it, that I was willing to change my mind when, and it's okay to change your mind about anything in life. You know, your mind's, it's never set in concrete. You can always change your mind. My husband and I have been talking about potentially going overseas and working abroad for a year. And he came home last night and said, actually, I've been thinking twice about it and don't know if I want to do it anymore. And I was like, oh, yes, for me, I'm excited. But it's okay to change your mind at any point in time about anything. And it's what's right for you in that moment.
Yeah.
And what you feel is best for you and your family.
And I think it's the same as well. You know, I've been in various fertility groups over the years, and they talk about this, I won't give up. And I think that mindset of I won't give up, yeah, it probably, you won't feel like you're giving up, but be open to the fact that there will come an end. Yeah. There will come an end where the amount of energy that you've got to put into it, the amount of finances that you've got to put into it isn't there anymore.
Yeah. And the emotion, you know, the emotional capacity.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Like, I feel like for Dan and I, it was not just the financial side of it, but the emotional capacity for us both to keep going on with no, I don't know. Like, I just felt I couldn't personally, like, I know lots of women, you know, and everyone has their own journey. But for me personally, I just knew that I couldn't keep going on and having this kind of roller coaster and this
it breaks you.
Upheaval every life. And I didn't want it to get to that point where it did break me, because I felt like it would get to a point in time where it would actually break me emotionally and mentally. And I was just like, you know, I probably would have gone and got a lot of help in counseling around making the decision to stop. Yeah. But I feel like I probably would have healed more. And it's okay for me, I guess, to sit here now having my beautiful little girl to say this, but I really feel that I couldn't have kept going personally. And, you know, maybe things might have been different, but I just felt like I couldn't, and I wasn't young either. So I wasn't like in my late 20s even, or early 30s. I was like nearly 40 by this stage. And I just thought, because everyone says to me, oh, you're going to go and have another child. And I'm like, oh no, no, I'm done now. Like, I'd be going back. I'm 43 now. So yeah. And I'd have to do all IVF again. And my eggs were no good then. So I can imagine they're not that great a quality now.
Yeah. And that's that decision that you make, knowing what your capacity is, what you're capable of. Yeah, definitely.
And I think it's okay, it's okay to say I'll never give up, and then it's okay to say, actually, you know what, I need to give up now. I need, for my own personal well-being, and for those around me, it's okay to say it's okay to stop.
Well, and that's right, because it's still a choice, and you're choosing life for yourself and the quality of life for yourself. Yeah. So that's what I did quite a few times. I took massive breaks because I didn't have the emotional capacity to do another round at that point in time.
Yeah.
And I really encourage people to do that. And even for my third round, that became my now 10-year-old daughter, I took 4 months off work. You were talking about I didn't share at work. I had one IVF buddy at work for that first stint before my daughter. But I had people at home that knew, but I still kept that group really tight because with my specialist, she wasn't growing them out to get to blastocysts. She would like freeze day one embryos. Wow. So then we did multiple failed transfers. And that was my roller coaster. It was like there was this year of failed transfers in 2010 that broke me. So that's when I took the few months off work. And then every time I did a cycle after that to try and get to my son, I would literally take a couple of weeks off so that I didn't get the phone call when I was at work. I didn't, I just took the whole time off, and that was the only way I could cope mentally, emotionally, everything. I was very, very fortunate that I had a good job, but I chose that purposefully, that I was able to be in a position that I could do that.
Yeah. So I remember the last round, Dan and I said, right, this time we're not going to go to work on the Friday when we were going to have our pregnancy test. So this time we're going to bring Coco, our dog, and we're going to go down to the beach where we love to take her. I was, I'd walk every day on the beach with Coco, and like, we're going to go there. We're going to, make a lovely day of it together, no matter what the outcome is. And I remember getting the phone call on the beach, and I still get emotional, but, just having that space to kind of celebrate even, and to enjoy that moment. And I remember, when she rang up and she was like, "You're pregnant." And I was like, "Oh my God." So it was, I remember like that 2 weeks between when the implant and when you find out or the transfer and find out if you're pregnant or not. I came home one day and I was like, oh, my back's just slightly sore. And I really was craving 2-minute noodles, and I didn't do any tests. I never tested. I was like, I have to eat noodles. And I remember going, when I was chatting to the nurses on the day I was having my blood test, I told them that, and they're like, oh, okay, well, that's, we'll see. And so I think they were quietly positive. But so Georgia was our only embryo, because they were like, oh, we'll transfer Georgia. She's an amazing blastocyst, a beautiful embryo. Yeah. Perfect. And I remember Dan and I high-fived in the clinic where we were, and I was just so excited. Yeah. And then they said, look, we've got a couple more that are still like not quite sure whether they're going to make it. And the next day they rang up and said, sorry, none of them made it, so we don't have anything to freeze. So Georgia was it. And I remember, like, up until that point, it was like, I've just got to fall pregnant. But then all of a sudden I was pregnant, and I'm like, holy shit, I've got to keep this baby alive.
Yeah. Just like next step, and then the next step.
Yeah. And I really remember, like, oh gosh, that 9 months was probably like my poor child. I know they say that, your emotional state and energy transfers. So then I was feeling anxious about being anxious. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm so anxious about her in my tummy. And then I'm anxious about being anxious. And I was just like, oh my God. And I was still getting acupuncture the whole way through. So still seeing my beautiful acupuncturist and still having those counseling sessions with her the whole way through. And then when Georgia was born, I remember then I was worried about keeping her alive. So for the year, like, I think the first year, like those few years of that whole process were very, very high stress. And I I did seek a lot of support and did go and see professional people because I knew that I really needed that professional help. So it's really, and that's another probably key takeaway, that if you do need that support and you do need the professional help, there's nothing to be ashamed of, to just reach out and to get that help when you need it, because your mental well-being and mental health is so important for not only yourself but your family and everyone. So,
and there's a reason why these fertility clinics have the counsellors.
Yes. I actually never saw one of their counsellors. It's interesting. I never went to their counsellors, but my acupuncturist, as I mentioned, and then it was after Georgia was born. So I think she was maybe 6 or 7 months, and I was like, I need some help now too. So yeah.
And so it didn't actually surprise me when your healer said to you, oh, you've still got some healing of your fertility journey to do, because it is traumatic. You know, there's, with each loss there's grief, and that grief sits in the body. That it is a form of it. I say I was traumatized by my process, so, and that sits in the body. And so and I know I'm not alone in that, being the experience of going through years of infertility. I mean, I know yours was, but you still did 3 rounds of IVF, and that's hardcore.
And I think like initially it was kind of like, oh, it's my husband's condition, you know, it's not me. I'm not the, you know, so I kind of like, I know it sounds terrible, but I felt relief, like it's not my, you know, especially from the mother-in-law. I was like, oh, she can't blame me for us not falling pregnant. And I know that sounds terrible, but I think once,
these are the reality of the thoughts that come up, aren't they?
Yeah. And then, but then once we started and my eggs kept dying, then I was kind of like, well, if my eggs were better quality, then we'd fall pregnant. So then, you know, because you have all these guilts and this pressure from the outside world and how to deal with all of that. Like I remember her saying to us at once, like, she has some really close friends, they have a little girl, and it was kind of like, well, you've got her. And she's like, no, I want my own grandchild. I remember her saying that to me, and it's like, oh, the pressure. So it's, you know, people, and people, I'm sure she never meant to say it in that way and to put that pressure on us either. But, you know, you have all these expectations from people outside of just what's going on for you and your family. So how do you navigate those as well? So it's really important to have that support group around you, I feel, to just navigate and just have someone, because it's okay to feel shit, and it's okay to have that day where you're like, I'm not coping. I need to talk to someone. You know, it's really heavy for me today, and it's okay to feel like that. And it's something I think I've come more okay with, in better terms with recently, that, you know, don't always feel like you've got to put this positive smile on your face and say that everything's okay when it's not. Like, it's okay sometimes to be like, life is shit at the moment. I'm really struggling. I need some help, and it's okay to ask for that help and not feel like you've just got to get up, get dressed, show up no matter what, you know, because it, you know, some days it's like, you know what, no, I don't feel like getting dressed, putting my makeup on and feeling good today. Today is shit, and I'm going to allow myself to feel this. And then that's the time when you really do need to reach out to that support person, to be saying, I just need someone that don't even need you to try and solve it for me. I just need to download and let you know, like, this is how I'm feeling today. And
we can't expect that from our partners. We can't expect our partners to be that person, because they're going through their version of the journey as well. And you said you've got an engineer husband. Engineers, like, they like to fix things. And as you said, like, we don't need them to fix it, we just need them to listen. So I had to teach my husband that, to just stand in the kitchen with me, hold me while I did big ugly crying, and just be there.
And I think sometimes when they can't fix it, it makes it even harder for them, doesn't it? They want to be able to solve and to fix, to help you in whatever way they can. But
in their blood.
But I was going to say, what was I going to say? Oh, it just slipped my mind. I was going to say something, but it slipped my mind. It might come back to me.
Well, I wanted to ask, and I always ask the ladies who come and share their stories, you know, what was the biggest challenge for you? Like, there's always lots of little ones, but when you kind of go, oh God, you know, that was the toughest moment.
I think the toughest moment was really that second round. We went in and we had that Morella, and the reality that I might not actually be a mother. Like, it really, like, that was the moment when I was like, okay, you know, this might not work. I've actually, and coming to terms, I think that was the biggest challenge and aha. And I remember just sobbing on that day, and my doctor saying to me, oh, just go and have a look. I'll see what else we've got in there and if we should transfer more than one today and just see. And he came back and was like, no, sorry, like I think they'd actually started to deteriorate. And he's like, no, I won't put them in because it will actually be more detrimental than and positive outcome. So I think in that moment, it was suddenly dawned on me that I might not be a mum. Yeah. So I think that was very challenging. It just brings up emotion thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not surprised. It is tough to get that news.
Yeah.
We're not equipped for that.
No, you just, you're growing up. I remember being 18 at uni and one of my good friends was 30. And I remember saying to her, and I look back and I cringe to say, having said this to her, and she was single and didn't have any children at this age. And I'm going, oh, by the time I'm 30, I'm going to have, the husband and the house and the 2 kids and the dog and blah, blah, blah. And, here I was at 29 getting separated from my long-term partner with no outlook or prospect of meeting someone new and no house, no, successful job, no, nothing, I was just like, I remember that moment being like, wow. So, it's amazing, like what life throws at you. But you just never know the journey that you're meant to be on and what the reason, and I guess now in hindsight, looking back, the journey that I've been on and where I am today, you can kind of connect the dots. And I love Steve Jobs' presentation all around, when you look back on your life, you can kind of connect the dots and see where it's led you and why it's led you in that direction. Yeah.
Beautiful. I love it. I love it when you can go, change that question from why is this happening to me to this is why it happened for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing your story today, Phoebe. Was there any last little things, tips, advice, bits that you felt you didn't quite cover that you wanted to
I know
share?
I did have, when I did my presentation recently at the networking event, I had a long list of all the things that I wanted to share. And to be honest, I can't remember them all off the top of my head. I threw the piece of paper out before you actually asked me to present.
Yeah.
But just, really reach out to people. I think the main thing, and I've shared it a lot today, is just really asking for that help, being vulnerable and finding that person or that group that you can really open up to and have that support that you need, and that you're not alone. And even though you might feel that you're on this kind of walking this lonely journey, that there's other people that can connect with you and share with you, and even just to be an ear, whether they've been through the journey themselves, or whether they are on the journey, or whether they just know someone, or whether they're just a really good friend or someone that you trust that you can just share that journey with, and just get that support. Because regardless of what the outcome's going to be, you need to have that team around you that can really support you.
Yeah. Well, for those listening who are on their own fertility journey, this Compassionate Women's Health community is definitely a space where you can share and ask questions or listen to the stories. There are so many of the members that I've recorded interviews with, and they've shared their story. And there'll be something in there that you can connect with and feel less alone. It is so important to reach out for that support and to know that you're not alone. Even I always think of the Kristen Neff self-compassion break, where you're having that moment where you're really struggling with a particular emotion or something's triggered you, and you recognize that this is a moment of suffering is step one. And then step two is to know that you're not alone. Know that, in a world of 7 billion people, that you are definitely not the only person who is experiencing that, and you can take comfort in that. And then step three is to give yourself some words of kindness. So imagine what you would say to someone in an empathetic way, not a sympathetic, at least it's not the way you start the conversation, but it's like, let me just sit here and hold you and sit with you. What do you want to share? You can say that to yourself, what is it that you're feeling? Let's just sit and hold this space right now. There's nothing else you need to do right now except be kind to yourself and sit here and show yourself that love. It's so important, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think of something I've recently learned is actually hugging yourself, like actually physically hugging yourself and giving yourself that kind of connection. Yeah.
Beautiful. Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Phoebe. I really, really appreciate your time and opening up and the authenticity with which you shared will be greatly appreciated by the women who are listening and watching this back.
Thank you, Belinda. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.